A wall of steel cut across the tropical water as the guided missile destroyer USS Higgins, DDG-76, moved 12 nautical miles west of Scarborough Shoal. It was 7:46 a.m. local time on August 13, 2025. On the AN/SPY-1D radar, the PLA Navy Type 052D destroyer Gillen, hull number 164, was closing in fast, accelerating to 28 knots. The ship already appeared tense and overly reactive after a recent mishap at sea. But the most striking detail came from the electronic warfare console aboard Higgins, where amber warning lights suddenly lit up in a burst. Gillen's Type 346 AAESA radar was flooding the area with an intense electromagnetic signal. This did not look like a calm or measured response. It looked like a rushed tactical move that hinted at growing strain in command and control. Higgins now had a rare chance to observe that mistake in real time through the full reach of the American intelligence network. In the South China Sea, the pressure had rarely felt this intense, and the wider strategic risk was impossible to ignore. The purpose of Higgins's transit was about far more than Scarborough Shoal itself, a remote cluster of rocks and coral. What was really at stake was the global flow of trade that supports everyday life far beyond the region, along with the legal framework that helps keep international waters open. Through its broad and controversial demand for prior notification or authorization for innocent passage, China was trying to reshape the rules across sea lanes that carry roughly 15% of the world's maritime commerce. This encounter marked a critical moment. Higgins was carrying out a classic freedom of navigation operation, a mission that went well beyond routine patrol duty. It was a direct and professional rejection of Beijing's maritime claims. The collision 2 days earlier, when a valuable PLA Navy destroyer struck its own Coast Guard vessel during an aggressive maneuver, had already revealed a serious weakness. Under pressure from Beijing to push foreign ships away, Chinese forces appeared increasingly willing to take risks that seemed difficult to justify. That pointed to deeper problems in command discipline and operational control. Higgins was not simply passing through contested waters, it was compelling the other side to reveal its behavior under pressure, raising the question of whether they would escalate while one of the world's most advanced intelligence systems tracked and recorded every move. This was more than a naval transit. It was a major test of the credibility of America's alliance network, the resilience of global trade, and the basic principle that the sea is open to all nations rather than dominated by the strongest regional power. What followed made that reality impossible to overlook. The opposing vessel, the PLA Navy Type 052D destroyer Gillen, is often described in Chinese media as the Chinese Aegis. It is a powerful warship, displacing around 7,500 tons and equipped with a 64-cell universal vertical launch system capable of carrying the supersonic YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missile and the HHQ-9 long-range surface-to-air missile. At the center of its design is the Type 346 AAESA radar, a four-panel fixed-array system built to echo the role of the U.S. Navy's well-known spy radar family. The mindset aboard Gillen, and more broadly within the PLA Southern Theater Command, seemed shaped by a dangerous mix of overconfidence and flawed assumptions. They appeared to believe they were confronting a lone warship, a single 505-foot destroyer that could be pressured, outmaneuvered, or pushed into backing off. But that view belonged to an older era of warfare. Their most serious mistake was failing to understand how modern combat works as a connected network. Gillen was not dealing with USS Higgins alone. It was effectively confronting the full, integrated architecture of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. Every tactical move, from the angle of the Type 052D's 130mm main gun to the operating pattern of its Type 346A radar, could be captured and relayed in real time across a much larger American surveillance web. In that environment, Gillen's aggressive posture risked becoming less a show of strength and more a source of valuable data for the other side. The real concern was not just the ship's weapons or sensors, but the willingness behind its actions and the broader challenge to accepted maritime norms. Yet the imbalance in this encounter was built in from the start. Overconfidence had led Gillen to confront an opponent capable not only of tracking its movements, but of reading its operational behavior and exploiting the very systems it depended on. The American response reflected a different level of preparation, combining technology, doctrine, and discipline. USS Higgins, a Flight II Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, carried the long-proven AN/SPY-1D multifunction phased array radar. While China's Type 346A represented a newer AESA design, Higgins drew its real strength from the Aegis combat system, a battle management and fire control network built to process threats at extraordinary speed. That capability allowed the ship to operate through Cooperative Engagement Capability, or CEC, meaning it was not limited to what its own radar could see. It could also receive and fuse targeting data from other platforms, including an E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft or a distant P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft. Its Mark 41 vertical launch system carried 90 cells, loaded with a defensive mix centered on the SM-2 and the ESSM, the latter especially effective in the final stage of interception, thanks to its thrust vectoring design, which gives it exceptional agility against fast, evasive targets. But in this particular encounter, the most important tool was not a missile battery. It was the AN/SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite. This system could do far more than monitor hostile emissions. It could interfere with, mislead, and directly challenge an opponent's radar picture. The preparation aboard Higgins was straightforward and disciplined. Defensive systems were set and ready, but the deeper objective was not immediate escalation. The ship was acting as a highly advanced sensor and intelligence platform, positioned to map out a complete engagement profile, not through firepower, but through control of the electromagnetic environment. The tension peaked quickly. At 8:01 a.m. local time, Gillen finished accelerating and swung hard to starboard, cutting directly across Higgins's bow. It was a hazardous move, clearly meant to pressure the American destroyer into changing course or facing the risk of collision, the same kind of reckless maneuver that had reportedly contributed to Gillen's own earlier damage. Seconds later, on Gillen's bridge, the American ship would have appeared massive and steady through the morning haze. Inside, the atmosphere was tense and strained, with hurried commands and growing pressure as the crew pushed the ship closer to its handling limits. Their nerves seemed worn thin, especially given that the appearance of a naval destroyer had raised the stakes far beyond what might otherwise have been treated as a routine Coast Guard-style encounter. Inside the Combat Information Center aboard USS Higgins, the mood was entirely different. There was no visible panic, no rushed confusion, only controlled focus. Lieutenant Commander Vance, serving as Tactical Action Officer, watched the converging tracks with the kind of composure that defines high-level naval discipline. Every contact remained stable. The course held. His voice stayed flat and measured even as the radar picture tightened. One hand rested near the fire inhibit control, but his real attention was fixed on the electronic warfare display. If this encounter was going to be decided, it would not be through visible force. It would be settled in silence. Then the next step unfolded. Higgins's AN/SLQ-32 V Sidekick Electronic Warfare Suite, supported by a deep library of previously collected data on Gillen's Type 346A radar signature, initiated a highly precise electronic response. This was not a crude attempt to overwhelm the system with raw noise. That kind of approach can be recognized and filtered. Instead, the effect was far more refined. A tightly focused burst of deceptive jamming was introduced, designed to flood Gillen's combat picture with false returns. In an instant, the radar display was crowded with phantom threats, including fast-moving tracks that appeared to emerge from multiple directions at once. For several tense seconds, everything narrowed to that invisible exchange. Gillen's advanced radar picture, which moments earlier had offered clarity and control, began to break apart under the pressure of digital distortion. What had been a usable tactical display turned into a chaotic blur of unstable information. On the bridge, deprived of a reliable sensor picture, the crew could no longer confirm the American ship's range or rate of closure with confidence. Under that pressure, the reaction came fast. An emergency turn was ordered, and Gillen broke sharply away from its intercept path. Because the ship was already moving at high speed, the maneuver turned into a broad and unstable swerve. What had been intended as a show of pressure collapsed into a visible loss of initiative. Higgins, by contrast, did not flinch. The American destroyer never changed course or speed, holding its line with the steady mass of an 8,400-ton warship, continuing along a legally protected route of innocent passage. In effect, the attempt to force a response had backfired. The opposing ship had ended up forcing itself out of position. What followed was a quiet but significant strategic success for the United States. Guilin, after its aggressive approach had been neutralized by an unseen electromagnetic response, withdrew beyond the 12 nautical mile limit, having exposed not strength, but instability. Higgins continued its planned mission. The freedom of navigation operation was carried through as intended, and the principle of innocent passage was reaffirmed without a conventional exchange of fire. That was what made the outcome so important. No missile was launched, no visible strike occurred. Yet the advantage was decisive. In the process, the encounter delivered a major intelligence gain. Gillen's abrupt high-speed evasive maneuver, combined with its full-power radar activity during the crisis, revealed valuable high-fidelity data about its behavior, system responses, and operating patterns under stress. The AN/SLQ-32 aboard Higgins captured something far more valuable than a momentary tactical edge. It recorded detailed performance data on the Type 346 AAESA radar under real pressure, including how it reacted to carefully tailored, deceptive signals at specific frequencies, power levels, and pulse patterns. Within moments, that data was processed, secured, and shared across the Link 16 network, reaching not only U.S. forces, but also Allied systems. What was meant to be a show of resolve instead revealed sensitive weaknesses in one of the PLA Navy's most advanced destroyer classes. A brief burst of electromagnetic activity had effectively generated insight worth years of research and immense financial investment. What followed was not a loud celebration, but a quiet acknowledgement of precision and coordination. The outcome reflected the strength of disciplined crews working in sync with highly integrated systems where training, doctrine, and technology aligned seamlessly. It also reinforced a broader reality about modern conflict. The decisive factor is no longer just speed or firepower, but how quickly information is gathered, shared, and turned into actionable understanding. From this encounter, two critical missteps stand out. The first was choosing an aggressive maneuver that pushed physical limits instead of maintaining controlled, professional conduct. The second was assuming that the situation would be defined by visible hardware, when in reality it was shaped by the depth and reach of the opposing information network. Gillen entered the situation as a capable and well-armed ship. Higgins operated as part of a much larger, interconnected system. The long-term impact may prove far more significant than the moment itself. The data collected during those few seconds will inform future analysis, shaping how systems are refined, how responses are calibrated, and how similar scenarios are handled going forward. In that sense, the encounter becomes more than a single event. It becomes a reference point, influencing decisions and developments well beyond the immediate situation. There is a clear message embedded in all of this. Actions taken under pressure can reveal more than intended, especially in an environment where every signal is observed, recorded, and studied. The true cost of a confrontation is not measured only in fuel or maneuvering effort, but in the information that becomes visible in the process. And that leaves an open question moving forward. In a domain where observation is constant and data is everything, how often can such exposures occur before their cumulative effect begins to shape the balance in ways that are difficult to reverse?